What's up? It's JuJuan Buford with JSB Business Solutions Group. And what I want to talk about today is why I think PIPs are a good thing. And look, follow me here. I know it's going to sound a little bit sarcastic, but it's really not. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine not too long ago, talking about how his significant other literally was getting ready to go through a PIP. And it was a lot of dread associated with it. And as we were conversing about that, I could tell he was a little bit perturbed because I didn't see it as such a negative thing. And my response to him was really simple, right? If you're going through a performance enhancement or performance improvement process, what have you, or plan, I think that's something you should embrace. And he's like, why? And I said, well, number one, it's going to clarify a couple things. Firstly, you got to make up your mind whether or not you still want to be there. Oftentimes people put themselves in situations, they put themselves in places where the soil isn't fertile, right? So you're planting seeds in barren soil and you should get up out of there anyway, right? But the other thing is it really presents a challenge in terms of improving yourself and in terms of not waiting on them to give you the plan, but it gives you an opportunity to exercise agency and come up with the plan yourself. And I know that's a different type of mindset, right? It's an entrepreneurial mindset, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. Because I remember, particularly early on in my career as an investment advisor, we didn't call them PIPs back then. It was just like, you're not producing, we don't want you here, you're not fitting the culture, that type of code, that type of language that would transpire if you were not carrying your weight, so to speak, or if you're not performing to a higher level. And I remember twice in my career as an investment advisor, I had similar situations where those things weren't necessarily communicated to me directly. I didn't have to worry about necessarily losing my position in the agency, but I could hear the whispers, I could hear the rumors, and oftentimes being the only pepper in the room, I knew what time it was, right? So I remember on two different occasions, and this is the advice that I gave the friend of mine to give to a significant other. The advice I gave him was, look, what I did is I identified the individuals in the office that were performing better than me. Not to hate on them, not to throw shade on them, or not to tear them down, but I identified who's doing better than me. I looked on the leadership board and I made it my mission to show up ahead of them on the leadership board. So whatever books I had to read, I read. Whatever trainings I had to take, I took. Whatever I could glean from them, because of course they weren't going to give me everything, right? Competition. But whatever they were willing to share with me in terms of why they were so effective, what I could observe from their behaviors, I adopted. And sure enough, I ended up on top of that leadership board each and every single time. And I wanted to be there, not even necessarily because I wanted to be there. I just wanted to be there because I wanted to prove something, right? And what you'll find oftentimes when you're presented with situations like that, you have a choice. You can fold, right? Or you can go ahead and step up to the challenge and get it in. And I'm just tend to be wired that way. And that's what I shared with them. But I also shared this because the gentleman is also an aspiring entrepreneur. And I said, man, we're pipped every single day as entrepreneurs. I mean, I got snubbed recently. It was a big time snub. Somebody called me up out the blue, asked me to be involved in a speaking engagement. I'm excited about it because I love giving back to the community. I love talking about entrepreneurship and empowerment. I think given my track record, that I'm uniquely qualified to have conversations about communal development and business development and entrepreneur development. But nevertheless, I received this phone call. I began preparing, rearranged my entire schedule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And literally a day before I am scheduled to perform and do the speaking engagement, I'm told, well, we found somebody else. All right, we found some other individuals to facilitate the speaking engagement. So we're going to ask you to show up and play at the vending tables and, network and workshop a little bit. And I just looked at them like, figuratively, I'm looking at them. And I'll tell you, for 0.5 seconds, there was a bit of rage and anger. It wasn't even because I was not accepted or was no longer scheduled. It was because I rearranged my schedule. I already had an agenda. I already had an itinerary. I already had stuff to do. And so not only have you snubbed me in the sense that you asked me to do A, B, C, and D, and then I look up and find out there are some individuals who are not, I have more qualifications in my pinky than they do. But in terms of how to address an audience and how to get people to move and accomplish and get things done. But now you messed up my money. So I was a little bit annoyed. I was a little bit upset about that. But you know what? The way I viewed it, after 0.5 seconds of rage and anger and disappointment and knowing I was snubbed, is I took that as a pip, right? A chance to improve my performance. And I made up my mind since it happened that there were some books I needed to read. There's some things I need to accomplish over the next 2 quarters. I haven't done a good enough job of marketing and branding myself. I admit it. I don't. I'm a operations technical type of guy. I like to find a solution, put my head down, get after it. And I usually don't talk much about it when I'm solving problems for other entrepreneurs and business owners. Like, you know what? I need to stun a little bit more. I need to be more apparent about the impact that I'm making in the community, right? And I know the steps I need to take. There's things that should have been going on a long time ago. But because sometimes I just refuse to play the game. I decided, you know what, well, I'm about to play the game because that ain't going to happen again. As a matter of fact, there's going to be expense associated with it next time somebody tries that BS.com. But anyway, I share with them these things happen all the time. When a client doesn't say yes, that's a pip. When you have a hard time getting someone to schedule an appointment, that's a pip. When someone doesn't keep an appointment, that's a pip. When you have a speaking engagement and you bomb, that's a pip. When you have a situation where a client is not happy with your deliverables, that's a pip. When you have a situation that doesn't go your way, period, that is a pip. And I told them we go through that every single day. And so while it may not be a quote unquote boss giving you a pip, right? It's your vendors, it's your contractors, it's the partners that you work with, your customers, your clients, your patrons, any and everyone that you spend money with or that spends money with you. You are constantly being evaluated. And what are you going to do on a day-to-day basis when these pips occur? How you respond determines your success long-term. And the bigger the problems you solve, right? The bigger the pips, the improvement plan, the more grandiose and effective your improvement plan is, the more money you're going to make. And I shared that with him because that's the mindset I wanted to inculcate in him as he makes his transition into entrepreneurship. And I thought it could be of benefit, right, to those who are listening in today. So with that being said, you know how I do it. I celebrate success in advance. Hey, if you were feeling that I shared today, you know what to do. Hit that share button, hit that like button, let the algorithm know you receive value. And of course, we know sharing is caring, right? Let other people know. That's the only way this channel grows. And the more this content is shared and the more people become aware, the more we can actually invest in guests and invest in topics and information that can be of greater benefit to you. Goodbye for now.